Peterborough's community radio station, Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. This is your very own Dr Shabina Asad Qayyum for the Body, Health and Mind Show on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. It is a delight to be back. I know I skipped a week in between, and I always say at the end of my shows that I will be back, but I don't specify when I'm going to be back. So that's the only thing I'm going to say in defense. But it's always a joy to be back with you, all of you here on Salam Radio. I absolutely love doing this show, and I can just see that our show is growing, and the radio, the actual Salam Radio, is growing from strength to strength with some wonderful shows that are broadcasting throughout the week. And I always try to bring those subjects in the world of health, mental health, and holistic well-being, because that's very much a part of health as well, good health, especially in today's day and age when we see so much conflict around the world. It is very important to ensure that people's mental health is also associated with their physical health, because I believe that the two go hand in hand with each other. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. I am a GP who works at Central Medical Centre in the heart of Peterborough and is a 13,000 patient practice population and growing in an incredibly beautiful, diverse part of the city. And I state that because Peterborough as a city itself is growing and is actually a hub and home to many diverse communities. And I see that reflected in the radio as well. I see that reflected in Salam Radio and how many shows that we're having that are full of diversity and full of various subjects. So I'd really like to commend the Salam Radio management team, as well as our volunteer presenters and our station manager, for trying to keep this all going. So very well done to you all. I am going to be talking about something that is quite close to my heart today. I think that it's relevant, and the purpose for this show is predominantly to educate people on the effects of this particular issue as opposed to a condition. It's an issue that I will be talking about from a health and well-being perspective. And educating people, I believe, is always important and forms an underlying premise of understanding of good community integration and just increased sense of well-being for those that are subjected to the issue, as well as those that have a lack of understanding of the issue as well. So I really hope that you'll be able to contribute in today's show with me. If you do want to speak a little bit about today's show, you're more than welcome to comment on the Facebook live video, which we have, and also call us on 01733 602 133. You can text us as well on 07411 191062. Or you can comment on the live stream on YouTube, Twitter or Twitch. And it's, again, a very, very pertinent show that I feel this feels quite close to my heart. So what I am going to do is talk about it now. As you're all aware, the world is in a state of conflict. We have over the last couple of years, or in the last decade, seen an influx of refugees and asylum seekers coming to the UK by fleeing persecution in many instances as well, and have found a safe haven in the United Kingdom. And that's really important because we often, they come and there is a lack of being able to speak the English language, which makes it quite difficult and poses challenges for health professionals. But more recently, we have had a very large influx of people coming to the UK who are identified as refugees and asylum seekers, predominantly fleeing persecution, and many have been transported to our city. But what I want to talk about today is the fact that there are a multitude of health problems and well-being problems and mental health problems that surround such individuals and people that are coming to the UK, and it's important to talk about that. The reason why it's important to talk about that is it directly directly affects the surrounding community and population, and how we deal with this population of people that have come to our shores. And in fact, I'm really grateful because I saw and listened to an incredibly good show that was presented by one of our presenters, Imtiaz Ali and Alex Blower. And it was a largely political issue that they were stressing on. But I think that this sort of complements that. And later on in the second part of the show, I will be talking to Safiullah Sharifi, who is a spokesperson for the United Afghan Community Association. And he will be joining me in the second half of the show to share some experiences and lived experiences with you all of the current cohort of asylum seekers who are currently within our city in Peterborough. And it came up as a bit of an emergency need, actually, and the need to be able to educate others on the health needs of such a population, and sometimes as health professionals, what we can come across as well when we treat such individuals who identify themselves to be asylum seekers. And the reason why this show is very important is because our dealings with each other in society very much create an environment of tolerance, create an environment of kindness, create an environment of acceptance. And I think the overriding and the overarching position that we all have is that we identify who we are, and that it costs nothing to be kind, or it costs nothing to be passionate, and also to understand that this particular cohort of individuals who identify to be asylum seekers are actually vulnerable, and that how we treat them is incredibly important, because they are thousands of miles away from a land that has been torn apart by the ills of war. And the reason why they're fleeing persecution is to find a safe haven. And whether that be a safe haven in the way of accommodation or just having a roof over their head, I also think it's really important to stress on the emotional safe haven that every single one of us needs to feel in our right as being human beings, and to be considered as being human as well. So I'd like to leave you with that thought before I go on and talk a little bit about some of the health issues that asylum seekers face. But I'd really like you to make this an interactive show. So please do join in. It would be great to have you on. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is that there's been a lot of talk recently around refugees and asylum seekers' entitlement to NHS care. And in all 4 nations of the UK, and this is everything that I'm going to say in today's show is either referenced from credible evidence sources, for example, such as the British Medical Association, which is the medical body and organisation, but also speaks from a legal standing and can be evidenced, or from official NHS resources. So make no mistake, any information that I give you today has been taken from sources from the British Medical Association or NHS online sources as well. And if any of you are interested into the origins of those sources, you are more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'd be happily able to provide those sources as well, because we are talking about a very sensitive issue here. So we do have to ensure that every bit of information that's given out is accurate. So in all 4 nations of the UK, refugees and asylum seekers with either an active application or appeal are actually fully entitled to free NHS care, like any of us are. And assessing entitlement to NHS care can sometimes be complex depending upon those individuals that have yet to have an assessment done. And in the case of many that are flocking to the UK shores, there still is that gap of information as to whether their assessments have been done, and many are awaiting assessments, but they are eligible for free emergency care at the point of contact. And that is an established fact. They are also eligible to register with primary care services, in other words, GP services as well. So that's incredibly important to understand as well. Now, for asylum seekers and even refused asylum seekers, they can receive primary care free of charge in the same way that any other patient in the UK receives care. And in England, Scotland and Wales, the actual reason why they can register with a GP is because immigration residency status actually have no bearing on a patient's entitlement to register with a GP practice. So that's about registering with a GP practice as well. And in Northern Ireland, the rules are a little bit different. But because we're in the United Kingdom and because we're in England, I will be stressing mostly on information sources for the United Kingdom as well. So it's important that we have a look at the intricacies around that as well. So a lot of people will ask me, and I've had this question a lot of time, that what about those asylum seekers that have been refused? So that obviously means after an assessment and after they've gone through some scrutiny about their applications. And refused asylum seekers, the British Medical Association stipulates that they're not necessarily entitled to secondary care or NHS care free of charge, and their ability to access care depends on whether the care is actually immediate, if it's urgent or non-urgent, in which case all emergency care is actually free of charge and they are entitled to it, or whether specific exemptions apply as well. And it is important that we make that differentiating right as well, that differentiating point. And it doesn't matter what the status is of an asylum seeker, whether that has been refused or whether that has been an accepted application. Emergency treatment is something that they are eligible for, regardless of their ability to pay or not. And the patient may be billed at a later date if that is the case. So for non-urgent care, there are some NHS trusts and community services that are required to charge refused asylum seekers. And this is the stressing on refused asylum seekers who are not exempt before providing care. So I really hope that this has sorted out a lot of confusion around, because this is one of the questions that I've been asked on many occasions as to, well, are these people eligible for free care? Of course they are. They are eligible for free care, and emergency care especially, irrespective of their asylum application status as well. So I think that it's really important that we establish that at the offset, because there have been, in my experience with refugees that I have been dealing with as a GP over the years, and not just currently, but over the years, I have been dealing with a number of refugees. I know what the health complexities are around them, and I certainly know what they're entitled to. So they definitely are entitled to emergency care. They do not need any form of ID if they are presenting to an emergency department and seek medical attention. So let's make no mistake about that. Now, there are some health challenges when we see refugees. There could be health challenges posed to the wider community, to public health, who are run by local authorities, to GP surgeries, and also to hospitals. So when we talk about the different health challenges as well, first of all, let's make no mistake that refugees will very often have very complex health needs, and that's a combination of physical health and mental health as well. And the reason for that is that they're actually influenced by the experiences prior to leaving their homeland. And they may experience some of these medical problems whilst they're in transit or after their arrival in the UK. And it's very important that any physician that comes in touch with these asylum seekers is well versed in giving them a holistic manner of support and resilience to help them adapt to life in the UK as well as they become integral members of our society. So that's incredibly important as well. Some of the health challenges that I've seen within my experience are those communicable diseases that have been left untreated. And we've seen cases of diphtheria currently within the cohort of refugees that have been located to the Manston site in the south of the country, and poorly controlled chronic conditions. So there may be many refugees who have blood pressure problems. They could have problems with diabetes, for example. They could have breathing problems and asthma. There are respiratory conditions. And believe it or not, I also see a very large number of patients who also have stomach problems too. So these could be chronic. They could or may have been on treatment in their home country, but actually now coming to the United Kingdom, their medications not be on them. There are lots of people who lose their medications as well. So it's incredibly important to appreciate that there will be lots that have chronic conditions, and they can become quite poorly if they deteriorate with those chronic and underlying conditions. Don't forget the women. Now, there are many women that we know of, and it's been apparent in the news, that have given birth actually whilst they have been expecting. And I saw a lot of this when I was fundraising for the Syrian refugees in particular, when the war was going on in Syria. And I remember fundraising for a particular charity, and it was winter, just like we have this weather now. And I remember that there were issues of people that were working on the ground, these charitable organisations, communicating to us that there was a great lack of powdered milk for the children or the babies that were being born to these mothers. And these mothers were so malnourished because they were asylum seekers or that they were refugees and in refugee camps, that they were unable to produce enough milk to feed their own children. And much is the case with people that come from these persecuted lands to the UK. And often I have found that they are very, very malnourished. There's a lack of common nutrients like vitamins, for example, or that they're anemic and they're deficient in iron. So a lot of these issues come to light, and it's important then to have a look at testing such people for deficiencies in iron and undergo iron replacement as well. But maternity care, and there are often ladies that come to the UK who are often refugees that are pregnant, and then it's very important to make sure that we signpost them to services. Don't forget that women also come into a vulnerable group, as well as those women that come with teeny tiny babies and small babies as well that need due medical attention and care too. Then let's talk about the big issue that a lot of refugees and asylum seekers have, and that is their mental health and specialist support needs as well. So there are often incidences in which refugees and asylum seekers are subjected to dire mental health problems, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, such as depression, such as anxiety, even obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD. Many deteriorate simply because they don't have that same input that they would have enjoyed in a stable and peaceful country. And then as exposed or these underlying conditions have the ability to turn into psychosis, such as schizophrenia, for example. So the mental health burden on such individuals is quite enormous, and it is great. So having to nurture such patients and give them the support that they need is incredibly important, but equally as challenging, because there's a communication gap. And I think as health professionals, the challenges that we face are that translating facilities sometimes, or often, especially within this era of remote consulting, is often done through a telephone. So you actually can't see an individual's body language, you can't see how they're speaking. But that's all changing now, gladly, and that can change. However, it is very important to get to the crux of these mental health problems and challenges that these poor people are facing when they're fleeing persecution. Mental health is a big problem as well. Now, the funny thing is, and this is one thing that I would like to nip in the bud, and actually I'm going to speak to my guest Saf about as well, that we see a lot of public uproar sometimes stating that these people are going to be a burden on the resource that we currently have in the way of employment, in the way of the NHS, and where are they going to go? And I hear a lot of people say, we don't get to see our GP. Actually, there is some evidence that is suggested by the BMA, which is the British Medical Association, that says that in a case study that they've conducted, there was no evidence of refugees and asylum seekers using a disproportionate share of NHS resources. And migrants in the UK and elsewhere in Europe actually tend to use fewer services than the native populations. So this was quite important to me to share, because recently we've had an influx of asylum seekers into our city as well. And Peterborough is known to be incredibly generous and has opened its arms out to many a destitute population, including Syrian refugees, including the Ukrainian refugees, including, again, under the Afghan resettlement scheme, a number of Afghan refugees, which was a very, very small cohort before. However, we've also heard on the other side, some people, or a few, say that this is going to be a drain on our city, and how many we won't be able to get to see a GP because we don't get to see them anyway, and they're going to be taking up all of this resource. Well, actually, the evidence suggests that refugees and asylum seekers have less health-seeking behaviour as opposed to resident populations. So that is very important, and that the advice for clinicians are that if you frequently treat patients who are refugees or asylum seekers, it is more important to make sure that they engage, actually, because there are a lot of specialist patient support organisations that are more in touch with refugees and asylum seekers, and they are more likely to engage with those third sector and charitable organisations as opposed to seeking advice from health professionals such as their GP. And this is the evidence behind it that has been stipulated in the British Medical Association. So that's a really important piece of information I'd like to share with you as well. So first of all, when an asylum seeker comes to our shores, the usual process would be to screen asylum seekers for communicable diseases. Now, in my job as a GP, I know that it's important to offer screening for infectious diseases that are common in the countries that refugees have come from as well. And it's important to take a history from them. It's also important to have a look out for the signs and symptoms of communicable diseases within this patient population as well. So there are some countries outside the UK that would seek to screen for hepatitis as well. Hepatitis screening within the UK is very easy. It might not easily be accessible, or people might not seek testing due to fear or stigma. But only just a couple of weeks ago, I'm really happy to see that Faizana Medina played its role within the community of holding a hepatitis C workshop where people came in after Jummah prayers and were able to be tested as well. So it was great to see that initiative, which means what? It means that our NHS is open, testing is accessible, and you can find out whether you've got hepatitis C or not. And we can run a few more of those workshops as well. In fact, there's been a huge interest that's been shown for people that want to test for hepatitis C. So I will be calling Sister Shabana back, hopefully within Peterborough as well. It's really important as well that whenever a communicable disease is detected, that Public Health England is informed about this as well. And Public Health England has its own migrant health guide that professionals can resort to have a look for when they are treating asylum seekers and migrants. So that's one thing that I wanted to put forward to you. And the reason why I'm giving this information to you, my listeners, is because I think it's important that you know step by step that there are procedures within the United Kingdom that officially are supposed to assess asylum seekers and refugees as well, to ensure that they are safe as patients and as individuals, and also to humanise them, to show them the element that here within the United Kingdom, we have a wonderful NHS and a wonderful service, and that treatment is free and that they don't have to worry about costs, especially if they're coming from countries where healthcare is paid for, and that's why we're so fortunate. But the second thing is that the advantage of that is that we're actually keeping our environment safe. We're keeping those individuals safe, and we're actually keeping the environment safe. And we take pride in that, we do. And I think that that's a good step as well. And vaccinations are also something that asylum seekers are also given when they come here. We've seen more recent cohorts of diphtheria vaccines being given. I did not realise that the adverts were going to come so quickly. So what I'm going to do is, after the break, I'll be calling Safiullah Sharifi, who will join me, and we'll be talking about the current cohort of refugees and asylum seekers that we've been seeing in Peterborough and some of the health challenges that we need to address. Stay tuned. After the break, Body Health and Mind Show with Dr Shabina Asad Qayyum.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
हाँ जी जनाब आज तुसने किया 12 बजे वे
जरा फैमिली की बाहर खड़ना चाहना या खिलाने पिलाने से सोचना कुथे जाओ
इसी च परेशानी वाली कड़ी गल है इब्राहिमी बफे रेस्टोरेंट पर जाओ उते फ्री पार्क करो उन्होंने मजेदार ते स्वादले पाकिस्तानी इंडियन चाइनीज ते इटालियन आय 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 खाने ना ते जोड़ी कोई नहीं नाले सस्ते ते स्वादले
ए तेरा अक्सर इसका मतलब है बटवा भी नहीं होला होनेगा इब्राहिमी बफे रेस्टोरेंट वैरायटी ऑफ डिलीशियस डिशेस के अलावा जेलाटो आइसक्रीम एंड वॉफल्स भी करते हैं वीकेंड्स पर अपना टेबल बुक करवाइए और वीकडेज तशरीफ ले आइए ओपनिंग आवर्स शाम 5 बजे से रात 10:30 बजे तक इब्राहिमी रेस्टोरेंट 63 Sycamore Avenue Peterborough PE1 4JP टेलीफोन 01733 313131
HS Lawyers make it so simple. Contact Majid Sarwar or Asad Arif today for any matters relating to immigration, family, business or property. Google HS Lawyers to see why we're the highest reviewed firm in Peterborough, with over 500 testimonies on our honesty, speed and excellent communication, making your legal matter simple, easy and stress-free. Contact us today on 01733 703 978. That's 01733 703 978 or email us at peterborough@hs-lawyers.co.uk. HS Lawyers, built on values of integrity and respect, with offices in Peterborough and throughout the West Midlands.
It's estimated that 5,760 children become orphaned every day, and the numbers are rising. UKIM ensures that the orphans we sponsor receive healthcare, food, education and shelter to show them that there are people who care. This Ramadan, from just £30 per month, you can make a real change in an orphan's life. Your sponsorship will provide them with much needed essentials to ease their situation. For orphan sponsorship, call now or visit ukim.org.
Where can you get high quality and low prices? Amar Food Store and Halal Meat in Lincoln Road, Triangle is the place to go. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. Also send money to Pakistan absolutely free. We have all top brands at special offers, offer free customer parking and provide a free local delivery service. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call us on 01733 687 374. High in quality, low in prices.
At Cake Inn, all our cakes and slices are freshly baked for that delicious taste. At Cake Inn, we bake 100% vegetarian and halal eggless fresh cream cakes. Delicious flavoured cakes for birthdays and weddings, ceremonies and all other occasions, with free customised messages, even balloons and candles too. Order for delivery or collection from Cake Inn, 489 Lincoln Road, PE1 2PE, and your cake could be ready within 2 hours. Find out more and order online at cakein.co.uk or call 01733 496 584.
If you want to learn about Islam and Muslims, stay tuned to Salam Radio 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Body Health and Mind Show on Salam Radio 106.2 FM, where you have your host, Dr Shabina Asad Qayyum, on the radio. Now, I'm joined by Brother Safiullah Sharifi, who is the spokesperson for the United Afghan Community Association. Brother Safiullah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Councillor Dr Shabina. Jazakallah khair for inviting me today to this interview about, well-being around, mental health, about refugees. So I'd really like to thank you, for giving us this opportunity here, to once again be here and represent our community voice. So
yes, of course. And it's very important. The reason why this show was important, Brother Saf, is because it's a form of education. Far too often we have seen a lot of division, and I'm really happy to see that Salam Radio has hosted a couple of shows, especially around sort of, the political aspect. And this show doesn't do politics, but it doesn't mean that we don't treat every human being with the same parity and the same equality that we do with any other patient. First of all, I'd like to let my listeners know that it was Brother Safiullah's birthday yesterday, so I hope you're all going to join me in saying a happy birthday to him. So let's all wish him a happy birthday.
Right,
Mashallah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mashallah. I hope you were spoilt rotten, but you've been working hard. I still knew that.
Thanks.
So no worries at all.
We're always here to help the community when they need, and thank you, for being there, to, assisting us in some of the medications and stuff which we are going to be talking about, of course.
Yes,
In
absolutely.
this show, yeah.
So we've seen, obviously due to no fault of their own, we've seen a number of asylum seekers that have been brought to Peterborough. And wording is very important. Language is very important, Brother Saf. Simply because of the fact that these poor human beings have fled persecuted lands and come over here in whatever conditions they have, landed on our shores in a strange country, often not speaking fluent English, and being in one place until they are assessed. You and I have both seen them. But for this purpose of our listeners, I'd like you to describe and educate our listeners a little bit of what your first reaction was, or their first reaction was, when you had an interaction with them after meeting these brothers. What were the things that you faced or saw?
So one of the first thing that, the United Afghan Community Association was one of the first to respond to them through a taxi driver who was parked outside, and they sought help from them in regards to clothing that they needed and some medication that they needed.
Yeah.
The taxi driver was luckily someone who was, friend of my father, who's the chair of the association.
Sure.
So he contacted him, and as soon as we found out that there's some, refugees in this hotel, and we went there. Our first reaction was, their body was itching. So as I'm speaking to you now, they were at that point were like scratching their bodies, and they were wearing the same clothes. You could see the hygiene display on their clothes that they were wearing. So when we spoke to them, like, what's going on, they said that they haven't got their clothes and phones, etc., has been confiscated from them. Mm-hmm. So they were only in the same clothes, sleeping in the same bed for many, many days without any clothes to change from. And from that point on, obviously, as someone who's got a medical background myself, I realized, that this could be, scabies from what I could see. And at that point, as if you remember, we saw that when we went there ourselves as well. When I came home straight away, I had a rash on my body, even though I didn't interact with them for more than an hour, and I was wearing mask, knowing that they could have some sort of infections. And I kept distance from them. But as soon as I got home, I had the body rash as well, for which I had to take some medicine to treat. But the situation was really bad there, and they needed desperate help. And that's when we started the charity campaign to raise funds, to raise, collect clothes. We set different destinations for clothes drop-offs. And alhamdulillah, we were successful in that. The community responded really well. People of all walks of life, came to the masjid and dropped clothes, and alhamdulillah, we have successfully delivered.
Okay, and I think you have done a really commendable job. The sad state of affairs is that, again, these are people that are fleeing persecuted lands, aren't they? And more than just the skin infections that we've looked at. We've seen scabies. We have seen scabies. It's the mental health side of things as well. Nobody wants to leave their home country if it was a fit enough place to live in, if it was a place where they could live peacefully without fear of being killed or that their family members would be killed. And that's exactly what happened when, obviously, the British forces pulled out of Afghanistan. And a lot of these people have helped, haven't they, the British forces?
Yeah. I mean, this is a very good point that you raised here. When we did speak to the people in both hotels in the first instance, they all shared their horrific stories and how they got here. And obviously, when we asked them like why they came to the UK, one of the first response was that most of these Afghan refugees, or the majority of the refugees out of 150 that are in both hotels, majority of them are Afghans. And they said that they've been working in the Helmand province, for the British government. And they, some of them have been actually taking bullets for them. And one of them actually has a bullet to his neck, which was basically, he still suffers from collapse in the hotel. He was, as you're aware, was taken to NHS and they turned him down for whatever reason that they had. So they shared their horrific stories with us regarding, escaping from persecution, etc. And they are here now. So we are here to, as a community, to help. And like you said, wording is very important in regards to how we describe these already vulnerable people who've been through so much trauma in their own country as well as when they were making their own way here. So,
Yeah, and this is one point that I want to say, and that was why, Brother Saf, it was really important that when I first started this show this evening, it was important to put out there and to educate people that these people are actually entitled to emergency care. They don't need any form of documentation. They are entitled to be registered with a GP. This brother who we both saw, who had a bullet lodged into his neck and has been fainting because there must be a problem with his blood supply to the spine. And that's why I think that he is. But him going to A&E as a result of that collapse, he should have been seen. And it's important that we use public platforms like this to make people aware of the fact that actually they're not impinging on the service burden or workload or lack of accessibility for anybody else, because the evidence shows that the British Medical Association has said that these people actually, they don't have as much health-seeking behaviour. And it's incredibly important that we humanise them. We humanise. And, I even feel quite hesitant using the word them, because we're all one community. Peterborough is fortunate enough to enjoy a huge amount of diversity, and we all live together. But in order for us all to live together in peace and acceptance, it is very important that those that have now come to our city in the hope that they will be accepted or treated with dignity, integrity and respect, that we acknowledge that there are problems and that we help fix those problems because we have the ability to do so. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the position that is a better position. And this is what is also required of us as Muslims as well, to help our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, or anybody that's persecuted, irrespective of what faith they are. Are you able to share with the listeners the type of horrific mental health problems or the type of trials or challenges that they face whilst they've tried to get here?
I mean, as someone who's been in the medical field, myself and yourself as well, when the refugees, when they travel, when they leave their country, they leave it for a reason, and that reason being is persecution. And so when they get here, from some of the stories that we heard were, when they crossed, the first time when they crossed the border from Afghanistan to Iran, there were bullets fired at them from Iranian army, so in Turkey and, all these countries. So they took risk knowing that they're going to be on the way, be killed if they stayed in Afghanistan, persecuted. They made their way trying to get here. So they told us all those horrific stories and how they got in here to the UK. Now that they are here, obviously we know from our medical background, as well as the listeners, which we are here to educate as well, is that when you get to a new country where you don't know the language, you left your family behind, you don't know what's going to happen to them. all those stuff can lead to mental health. And one of the most common mental health, as you know, in primary care, as you most likely see patients, is depression, right?
Yeah.
So depression is the most common problem. And all of these patients, they have, depression problems. If you see them, they're not eating well. And that's one of the symptoms of, loss of appetite, lack of eating food. And that's why that's one of the other reasons why they're malnourished in there, because they are basically still in a state of fear of what's going to happen to them here, and also what's going to happen to their families back home.
Yes.
So mental health is definitely a big biggie in terms of in both of the hotels. So more specifically, we're talking about depressions, flashbacks of the journey that they made and the things that happened in the 2021 August. That happened. So all those flashbacks, people falling from airplanes, all that flashback. Even I get those flashback, and it horrifies me. So how about these people that actually saw it at first hand happening and making their own way here? So depression and these flashback that they get is a big thing. Is the most common thing amongst these refugees, and we kindly got. We've been trying to connect with different organization, communicate with different organization, and Peterborough Prime has Brother Nabil has offered to if they need their mental well-being looked into, their organization is willing to help. So it's really good, alhamdulillah, like how you mentioned, not just because we are Muslims, alhamdulillah, first we are human beings, and then secondly, we are Muslims, we need to be there to help, regardless, who, whether it's Muslim, non-Muslim, we're there to help in whatever way we can, and alhamdulillah, our charity campaign, the community responded really well. From all people and faith groups from all different backgrounds came together, and we delivered, to help them. So we helped as much as we could, and we are now, alhamdulillah, able to also help other refugees in other hotels that are, in Ipswich, in Boston. We had contact from representatives of Circle saying these people, they have the same problem as the one in Peterborough. They have medical problems, they have mental health issues, they need clothing. Please, 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 they were begging, if you have any spare clothes that you have left over, can you please bring it over to us at Boston or Ipswich or Huntingdon or Skegness. So there's quite a lot of places, and alhamdulillah, we're working together as a community here, but we're also in contact in communities there to try and accommodate for those needs.
I think that's so important. And I think that they are so fortunate. The people in Peterborough actually are so fortunate to have the UACA on board that are looking after them, but it's a huge county, as you know. The logistics are huge. You have 200 people, like we spoke just before we went live, that spoke about Skegness, 200 people there. We've got so many in Ipswich. And it really does make me think about some of these conditions in which, they may be living in. They only have each other to prop up. And these people have families, don't they? Most of their families will still be back home because obviously children are vulnerable. They're very fragile, as well as women as well. And getting out of one country and then obviously risking their life across the English Channel, it would have been very difficult for them to bring their wives and children as well. And just before you came on, I spoke about Syrian mothers who had given birth back in the crisis when the Syrian war took place, and there was a shortage of baby milk because they were so malnourished, these mothers, they couldn't even feed their children. So to imagine that a lot of these people, if they've had their details taken away from them, many of their family members won't even know whether they're alive or dead for those people that are here. And that is really painful. That is agonizing for them to talk about. And we're talking about mental health, Brother Saf, and one of the things I think is important, I would love to share with you as well, is that there are a number of NHS or non-NHS services that support mental health of migrants as well, and refugees and asylum seekers. Obviously, we have the Refugee Council that works directly with the refugees. It would be worth, I think, us after this finding out what resources there are. There's the Helen Bamber Foundation. Rethink is a mental illness charity, and also Freedom from Torture is a medical foundation for the care of victims that have actually undergone or been subjected to, like you say, trauma, bullet wounds, etc., and have got all those post-traumatic stress disorder problems. So these can be areas that we can have a look at as well. And there's also a document known as Principles of Psychological First Aid. So people from the migrant community, as we've seen, there are organizations that have representatives like yourself, or even from other organizations that can speak their language. There is a good document known as Principles of Psychological First Aid that we can refer to and help them as well. So I think that is really important. And also, I think that it's really important that at this moment in time, it is winter. These brothers are in need of warm clothes. What are the other items that we're also looking for to help them?
So what you just mentioned about those help that's available from mental health, I think this is critical information that you have there. So thank you very much. And I would really appreciate if you could give me that information after, so I could share with them so they can go accordingly when they need to. And the question that you just asked about what other items, winter is coming, they need jackets, warm jackets to keep them warm through the winter. Some of them still require shoes, socks, hygiene products, and some of them need, mental health. As we need to look into the root of what mental health is, and mental health can be, defined in different terms. We can look at it from a psychological perspective, from psychiatry perspective, as well as from religious perspective. And one of the problems that the brothers had there was their well-being was affected by not having enough facilities in order for them to perform their salah. So not being able to pray their salah can affect you spiritually. So that is you not being happy from your spiritual side. And we tried to help them, to provide them with some musallas, prayer mats and mushafs, Qurans. And that's what we are trying to basically campaign for. And we have been campaigning, and alhamdulillah, the organizations in Peterborough, the faith groups have responded really well. We have the Fizan Medina Husseini Islamic Center. Brother Rizwan has been very helpful. I mean, he has told me that he's planning on 100 musallas and 100 Qurans, which is, quite good in terms of, facilitating for their spiritual side of mental well-being, to keep them, to at least allow them to be able to pray in peace using the correct method, and, have something for them to read, which they can, relates to have, for back home. So these are some of the items that we are looking to currently collect. And we also been contacted today by Help Peterborough, and they also said that they've got some clothing, like warm jackets, etc., that they said if you need, you always come to collect them and deliver them. So we are trying basically to contact as many different organizations as possible to collect as much clothes and hygiene products and the things that we mentioned in our campaign to deliver and collect, not just in Peterborough. Alhamdulillah, Peterborough is now getting towards the 100%. It's not 100% yet, towards 100%. But we are planning now, inshallah, to move forward to help other cities in our locality to help them. But medical is still the one that's outstanding. I know there's a lot being said than done, and that needs to be still looked into, as you're aware.
We need to follow that up.
We need to follow that up, and there needs to be an ease of access to volunteer organisation like ours, or yourself, who's the counsellor for the East Ward. If we have volunteers, who are willing to give the care that they need, the basic medical care that they need, then there shouldn't be a problem, because at the end of the day, that's helping. If you're talking about, there's a lot about, strain on NHS, strain on resources, etc. Then when there is a voluntary organisation who's going to help, then why they should be stopped? Why they shouldn't be stopped? They should be encouraged, to go and help, because that will not only help the company that's responsible for these refugees' well-being, but also, that's the strain that we're talking about on the NHS, that will be reduced as well.
Of course, and I think that it's really pertinent what you're saying. And the reason why it's pertinent, Brother Saf, is because you and I have both been there, seen the difficulty with which we've tried to speak to these refugees. Need support. They definitely need support. And, having a look at the way that there were shoes, they had flip-flops on. A lot of them were suffering from itching problems. Obviously, the scabies was one thing that we were concerned about. But you're absolutely right, where it has been said that health attention has been given to them, we will need to follow that up. Because if we follow that up, we not only humanize them, which means we treat them like human beings, which is what their entitlement is, or how they deserve to feel as human beings. and also under the Human Rights Act, but also we are making our environment more inclusive. We're making the environment safe for them to go out into as well. And we're protecting, it's a twofold thing. We're protecting them and we're protecting the wider society as well, so that they are free to move in those circles. And alongside yourself, you're absolutely right. We've had, religious institutions such as Husseini Islamic Center and Faizan Medina and
Masjid Khadija Islamic Center.
Khadija Islamic Center, all of these organizations that have really tried to help. And actually, Brother Rizwan, you mentioned his name, he himself was a young little baby when he came into this city as somebody that was seeking refuge away from Idi Amin in Uganda all those years ago in the 1970s. So he knows the pain that these people suffer from. And we've got to make sure that people don't forget their pain, because this could all be a big hype, but then it slows down and people slowly forget and they stop caring. And our aim is that people never forget, that's really important. And that's the message we need to get out here. So if any of you listeners are listening to this program, please understand that it is so important that we need as many donation of warm clothes, socks, shoes, jumpers, anything that you're able to give, tracksuits that you no longer use, because that's sort of warm material as well. Please do get in touch with Brother Saf, and there's also Brother Salman Khan as well of the United Afghan Community Association. Where are the drop-off points?
So we've currently got 3 drop-off points. One is Hussein Islamic Center. The second one is Masjid Khadija Islamic Center, and the third one is Medina Madrasa and Spiritual Center, which is in Midland Road.
Yeah.
To get more information on that, you can go on our website, which is very easy to remember. Just type in uaca.co.uk and you'll find more information and what we're doing on our website.
That's wonderful. Is there anything in the way of sort of support that you need from a local point of view in terms of interpretation services or anything like that we need? Because I know that currently it's only you and Brother Salman who are facilitating translation for these brothers.
The City Council today sent an email out saying that they're doing some sort of translation course in which they encourage people from different language who can speak more than one language to take that course and then being able to help out in the community. But I think we need something more urgent than this, because these asylum seekers, or that they call it so, we don't call them. Our organization absolutely do not call the refugees, more specifically the Afghans, to be asylum seekers, because we call them refugees because they are refugees for us, not asylum. We need to define what those two terms mean.
Yeah. Educate us, because I've used that term.
Yeah. So asylum seekers it could be anyone running from a specific perspective, running from for a different reason, and their reason might not be true if they're coming seeking asylum here. But refugees are the ones that actually know, and it's not just known to them, but it's also known to the world why they're coming here. Okay. And the Afghans are not here as so-called, shown by the media, as illegal immigrant or economic migrants. They're not economic migrants. You've seen the state of Afghanistan for the past 40 years. 40 years Afghanistan been through hell. First it was the Russians that came, destroyed Afghanistan completely. We had millions of people migrating across the world. Then we had the US coming in, and that continued for 20 years. Afghanistan has been for 40 years going through hell. These people that are here should be, any person that can be identified as Afghan should be given a refugee status and should be given the same right as it was given to the Ukrainian refugees. The Ukrainian crisis started, recently. The Afghans have been going through this for 40 years. So if they are here now, we as a community, we looked after them as much as we could, but there's only so much. As a voluntary organization, we don't get funding from the government, we don't get funding from council, we don't get funding from no one. We help our community, out of goodwill, as a human being, but we do what we can, not just help the Afghans, but there's Christians, there are Christians in there, other faith groups, people in these refugees camps, in Peterborough. So we're not just helping here. It's not about Muslim or non-Muslim or Afghan or non-Afghan. We're trying to help everyone that's there. But we will stand up. We will take one of our mission of our association is to start to be adequate for our people and show support. And this is the time for us to stand up and take a stance on what we believe in, and which is to basically treat them as refugees, someone who's vulnerable, someone who's been through a lot of trauma. And to get to this country and be called illegal immigrant, taking space, etc., is unacceptable and is degrading, and it's inhumane.
So I'm glad you've made that point. We have 30 seconds before the show finishes. What I want to say is you've educated me today. Good work starts with me. I'm going to change all of my statuses where I've referred to them as asylum seekers. I really didn't know. Please accept my heartfelt apologies for that. I will correct that, because it's important as public representatives to admit to that. We will keep this fight going for the good sake of humanity. Thank you very much for joining me, Brother Saf. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much.